Just days ago, we were told reports of a possible drone threat to the West Coast were based on unvetted intelligence. No credible threat. Nothing to worry about. But now, multiple drones have been reportedly spotted over a U.S. Army base in Washington, D.C. Not once, repeatedly. An installation where senior U.S. officials live and operate, and behind the scenes there are discussions about relocating them. So which is it? No threat or something we're not being told? Tonight we break down what's actually happening and why both coasts may be more connected to this story than you think.
From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth.
An FBI intelligence bulletin is raising eyebrows across the West Coast. According to reports, federal authorities warned California law enforcement that Iran could potentially launch drone attacks from a vessel off the Pacific coast if tensions escalate. There's no confirmed threat, no confirmed targets, but it raises an uncomfortable question. If an enemy ever tried to strike the United States directly, why would the West Coast be one of the most logical places to do it? Why California would be a target? California isn't just big, it's a strategic hub of the United States military and economy. If someone wanted to disrupt America, California presents three obvious categories of targets. California hosts some of the most important military installations in the Pacific. Naval Base San Diego, Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, Edwards Air Force Base, Travis Air Force Base. These bases support American military operations across the Pacific. If someone wanted to weaken U.S. military logistics, these would be obvious targets. Major ports. California ports are some of the busiest in the world. The Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach together handle a massive portion of U.S. imports. A disruption to those ports could disrupt supply chains, delay goods across the entire country, and spike prices nationwide. Ports are economic choke points. In any conflict scenario, infrastructure like this becomes strategically important. Energy infrastructure. California also has major oil refineries, the ones that haven't left, concentrated along the coast. Facilities around Los Angeles, the Bay Area, and Northern California refine fuel used throughout the western United States. Disrupting refineries could create fuel shortages, transportation problems, economic shock. Energy infrastructure is historically one of the first targets in modern warfare. Population centers. Then there's the simplest reason. Population. Cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, each contain millions of people. Historically large cities often become symbolic targets because attacks there create maximum psychological and political impact. Why Washington State matters. Washington State has some assets that are even more strategically important, and most people in Washington don't realize just how significant they are. Naval Base Kitsap, one of the most important military installations in the United States, sits just outside Seattle. Naval Base Kitsap on the Kitsap Peninsula. This base supports the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet of nuclear ballistic missile submarines. These submarines carry Trident missiles with nuclear warheads and form part of America's nuclear deterrent. In fact, the base is home to one of the largest concentrations of deployed nuclear weapons in the United States. Ground Zero Center for Nonviolent Action. In strategic terms, that makes it extremely important location. Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Across the water in Bremerton is the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. This facility performs major repairs and overhauls for aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and Pacific Fleet vessels. Without facilities like this, maintaining naval readiness becomes much harder. Joint Base Lewis McChord. South of Tacoma sits Joint Base Lewis McChord. This installation serves as a major Army base, a key Air Force transport hub, and a deployment center for Pacific operations. Troops, aircraft, and equipment move through this base during overseas deployments. That makes it strategically important as well. Washington's ports. Washington also has some of the most important ports in North America, the Port of Seattle and the Port of Tacoma. These ports support international trade with Asia, military cargo movement, supply chain logistics. A disruption here could ripple across the entire U.S. economy. Keep in mind, Washington is also home to a lot of Iranian sympathetic groups, pro-Palestinian, pro-communism, pro-socialism, anarchists, and other anti-American groups. At one recent protest in Seattle, they were calling for the killing of American soldiers. Geography and the Pacific. The West Coast also presents a unique challenge for security planners. The Pacific Ocean provides enormous maritime access. Ships, cargo vessels, fishing boats, and private vessels move through these waters constantly. That's why the FBI warning mentioned the possibility of drones being launched from a vessel offshore. A small boat hundreds of miles from the shore could theoretically launch unmanned systems without immediately revealing who was responsible. Modern security planning now includes monitoring exactly these types of unconventional threats. Now here's where this story takes a turn. After reports circulated that federal authorities warned about a potential drone threat to the West Coast, the narrative suddenly shifted. Government officials came out and said the warning was based on an unvetted source, and just like that, the concern was downplayed. No threat, nothing credible, move along. But here's the problem. That's not how intelligence usually works. Warnings don't get sent out to law enforcement across an entire state over nothing. Even preliminary intelligence typically goes through multiple layers before it ever reaches that level. So when something like this gets walked back publicly, it raises questions. And then, almost immediately after officials dismissed the threat, another related story surfaces. Different angle, same region. Same underlying concern about asymmetric attacks and unconventional methods. And now you have two competing narratives. On one hand, we have no credible threat. On the other, we're actively discussing scenarios where attacks like this are possible.
Story out of Washington, D.C. A live look over the nation's capital here behind me this morning. Reports of drones over a D.C. Army base. Fort McNair, as it's known, is also where Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio live. And at the moment, Army officials have not commented exactly on this. In the past week, multiple drones have been spotted over that Army installation. According to the report, the drone concerns have prompted officials to even consider moving Rubio and Hegseth somewhere else. The sightings come as the U.S. raises the global security level for diplomatic posts around the world. Both the State Department and the Pentagon, again, have not commented yet.
This is where the people start to lose trust, because from the outside, it looks like one of two things is happening. Either the official warning was real enough to circulate internally, and it's being minimized publicly to avoid panic, or the intelligence process is so loose that unverified information is triggering statewide alerts. And neither of those explanations is exactly comforting. Pattern recognition. If you've followed national security issues for any length of time, this pattern isn't new. Initial report, public concern, official walkback. Then additional reporting that suggests there was something there, just maybe not fully confirmed. We've seen it before, and it creates a gap between what the public is told and what's actually being discussed behind closed doors. Strategic reality. At the end of the day, whether this specific warning was credible or not, the larger reality hasn't changed. The West Coast still has critical ports, major military installations, nuclear deterrent assets, and dense population centers. Those facts don't go away because a statement gets issued. And just when officials are telling the public there's no credible threat to the West Coast, another story breaks. This time not in California, not in Washington State, but in Washington, D.C. What happened? According to reports, multiple drones have been spotted over a U.S. Army installation in the D.C. area, Fort McNair. That's not just any base. That's where high-level officials live and operate, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And here's where it gets interesting. These weren't one-off sightings. Reports say drones were seen multiple times over the past week. And the response? Not a press conference, not a clear explanation. Officials have not commented publicly, but behind the scenes, there are reports they're considering relocating senior officials out of that area. Let that sink in. If there's no credible threat, why are you even discussing moving top level leadership? Timing. Now line this up with everything else. You have a West Coast drone warning that gets labeled unvetted. Then immediately after, drones are reportedly flying over a military installation in the nation's capital. At the same time, the U.S. is raising global security levels for diplomatic posts. That's not proof of anything by itself, but it is a pattern. Strategic shift. This is what modern threats look like. Not missiles crossing oceans, not traditional warfare, but small, hard to detect systems, drones, launched from unknown locations, testing response times, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. Now, to be clear, there's still no confirmed attack, no confirmed hostile operation, and no official statement tying any of this together. But the combination of events raises a legitimate question. Are these isolated incidents or early indicators of a shift in how threats to the U.S. homeland could look? Because whether it's the West Coast or Washington, D.C., the underlying reality is the same. Critical infrastructure, military leadership, population centers, all of it is part of the same strategic picture. And if that picture is changing, we'd all like to know before it's obvious. So maybe this specific warning turns out to be nothing. Maybe it was bad intel, but the scenario itself, that's not fiction. And that's why stories like this matter, even when they get walked back. Thanks for watching Left Coast News. Please like, share, and follow us for more stories about the Left Coast. You can find us on all your favorite social media: YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Brighteon, Spotify, Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, X, True Social, Substack, and TikTok. Visit our website, leftcoastnews.net, or behindthelinepodcast.com for more information. And please comment below and let me know what you think of this situation. I think something like this plays right into Washington's laws. In my other podcast that I talked about, wanting to have non-citizens as police. Imagine a terrorist organization embedded in the United States and putting some non-citizen police on a local force, and how much information they would have access to in that case. I think these governors in the left coast are clueless when it comes to this stuff, and I think a lot of the people that live in this area are very naive about it as well. Extremely naive. And the governments here seem to support all these anti-American groups, and I think the West Coast is ripe for something like this to actually happen. So let me know what you think. Let me know how you're preparing for something like that, and we'll talk to you next time.